So with that bravery, I hope that what I can provide for C-suites and CEOs and business people listening is a sense of perspective that helps to make braver decisions that can help the businesses go further. So I think to be properly sustainable, it needs to be less about sort of wearing a hair shirt and we've just got to do this because the world is going to explode if we don't and what have you. I don't think it's very convincing for the public, even if it is true, it's not. But also, more to the point, what we need to do is recognize that technology is the thing which is going to create us a sustainable future. And if we can be the leaders in that technology, then we get the chance to export it around the world. So I think a sustainable future for the UK is all about harnessing tech, being at the forefront of whether that's green tech for energy or AI, all these other incredible technologies. That is where we need to look to create a sustainable future for the UK that is not just good for sustainability, the environment, and the rest of it, but also kind of gives us the economic edge. And I'd like to see a lot more of how do we solve these problems through tech, and a lot less of telling people that they can't go about living their lives, because I think that actually is a surefire way to not end up solving the problems because you lose the public along the way. Well, I think where we need to get to in basically in our lifetimes is away from this enormous cost attached to powering stuff. So if you think about, whether it was the oil crises of the 1970s or the shock when Putin illegally invaded Ukraine and the, again, oil prices, gas prices shot up through the roof, we need to get off this cycle of being reliant on these fossil fuel prices and instead generate enough electricity or learn to use a lesser amount to do more in order to fix these problems. And when we do that, we will have created a world in which we can be a lot wealthier and people a lot better off as a result. So, give you an example of that. There are all sorts of technologies eventually that will come down the line, like fusion, for example, which would be unlimited energy, incredibly cheap. But even way before that, the way we use energy, like the LEDs in your home or your business right now, are using a tenth of the electricity that the light bulbs would have used 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, certainly. The halogen, I mean, not hydrogen. So, the ability for us to do stuff with less power and the ability to use things like renewable power with much, much better solar cells and better technology and AI helping with that and all the rest of it, all of those things are going to help us to do more, and the business case for renewables gets stronger and stronger as that happens. Well, I think the interesting thing about artificial intelligence, if you ask a lot of business bosses, they'll say, well, it's yet to really take hold. But what they don't realize is in the background, virtually everything that we're all doing every single day is now affected by AI, whether that's a search on the internet or the answer that you get when you ask a company a question. There's probably some AI somewhere embedded in that. I think the big difference this year is that people will start to recognize in the workplace that they themselves are using AI. And I think that we'll see a big acceleration of that in the year ahead. And the reason I say that is because people are becoming more literate about AI. Remember, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, people wouldn't even heard of Chat GPT, though it had been in development for a while. Now it's second nature. A lot of people have accounts. Interestingly, in the UK, I was looking at some stats on this. British companies are far more likely to be deploying AI than, for example, US or European companies right now. So I think actually for British business leadership, there's a great opportunity here to use the enormous efficiencies of AI to retrain staff and, most of all, not to ban it in the workplace, because I see stats that show even where it is banned in the workplace, that employees are going off using it anyway. And anyway, why would you want to ban this most powerful technology that we've witnessed since the birth of the internet? So I think this year is going to be the year of AI in the business workplace. Well, be sensible. Let's not destroy the planet, I think, is a big one. Um, that's at the very sort of macro level. In terms of businesses, I think what we all owe our customers, whether that's another business, business to business, or consumers, if it's B2C, what we all owe them is the honesty to say this is AI, or this has been assisted by AI, and so that people know where it's coming from. And I think that's sort of from an ethical point of view, I think that's kind of really important. And actually, assisted by AI at the bottom of whatever it is, whether it's a chat bot or an article, or I think people will get used to this very, very quickly. I don't think this will be unusual in a year or two's time at all. But I think it's better to be upfront about it. Obviously, in terms of like what AI is capable of in the wrong hands and all the rest of it, look, we are enormously fortunate to live in the democratic West, where we actually have proper controls over these things. Briefly, I was Home Secretary, for example, and I spent that time signing off about 100 warrants, which would be used to, take information from people without their consent. Very bad people, typically without their consent. But the fact that the decision to intercept and to spy on citizens, for example, required the sign-off of the Home Secretary in this country is a completely different end of the scale to what you'd find in a large number of countries around the world where the state routinely spies on its citizens. And so we do have the checks and balances in place. I think that's really important. But we are also in a competitive battle where there are large parts of the world, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and many other wannabe states who just don't want to provide those kind of liberties and freedoms, and they'll use AI in the worst possible way to try to suppress their citizens. So I think we need to stay very alert to all of this, but just at a basic ethical level. If you're using AI, tell people you're using AI, and there's nothing to be ashamed about, but at least give your customers the knowledge that AI has been involved. I hope a sense of perspective, actually. So at various different times in my political career, I ended up in a vast array of different departments of state, from Home Secretary briefly to Defence Secretary to Transport Secretary to Business Secretary, Energy Secretary. I was Housing Minister, I was in the Foreign Office, I was in the Cabinet Office, I was in International Development. The thing I found was the problems were often very large, and increasingly so, particularly in roles like defence, where I would literally be, lying awake and wondering about whether the decision I had just made, not to put too fine a point on it, would kill too many people. Everything in business is a sub that level. Everything in business is about making decisions about your organisation. And I think that we all end up in our lives thinking, if I don't get this right, this is going to be horrendous, etc. But let's get a bit of perspective on this. In politics, the decisions you make are not only made in the full glare of the public world, but even your home life, your family life, everything you do is made in the full glare. In business, the only people who are ever going to know are probably the people in your sector, maybe in your company, in your sector. And I think if you know that, then you can be a bit braver about the decisions that you make, because the worst that can happen is probably not going to kill people. It's probably not going to be on the evening news all over social media. So with that bravery, I hope that what I can provide for C-suites and CEOs and business people listening is a sense of perspective that helps to make braver decisions that can help the businesses go further. And I think that would be one of the main hoped for outcomes out of anything that I'm saying to people who are in control of some very significant businesses in this country.